Right. So for those of you who don't know me, I've been in the railway industry since 1979, and the very first thing I got involved with was track renewals. And at the time I thought it was very ordinary, shall I say, in the sense that other people who were embarking on a civil engineering career were building nuclear power stations, or well, the M25 wasn't built at that stage, and so on. What I've subsequently realised is that there's nothing to be ashamed of to say that you do track renewals, because what happens with track renewals happens generally in a very short space of time. If you're rained off, the plant doesn't work, that's just tough. You've got a sucking great hole in the ground and somehow you've got to fill it in, and the post-mortems and the awkward phone calls that happen on a Monday morning, if you've held senior positions, you know, are not very pleasant. So it's a serious task. It's not for the faint-hearted, and it's not an activity that risks can be taken. And I look at the audience here. Some of us have known each other for most of my time, and have had some really horrible experiences where people have had too close a call, and that's it, end of it, on a track renewal site. However, so that's the sort of the safety message. This is a really grown-up game, track renewals. The times have changed. And for those of you who don't know about life pre-spreadsheet, looking in my office this morning, I found this collection of papers. It says JJJ Boats DCE Nottingham, Divisional Civil Engineers. Although a lot of it's design detail, the interesting clutch of papers at the front relates to the organisation and planning of track renewals, like the layout diagram for the routes around North London, to make sure that when a train leaves a depot, when it gets to your site, it's the right way round. And if some of you like to come and inspect this, it's at best it's typewritten, but I'll just show you an example of trail hole information. It's handwritten and it's been through the photocopier. And this is how it was done. And you know, there is life beyond a spreadsheet. A spreadsheet is a support mechanism. Pre-spreadsheet, we had pro formas. If you weren't that organised, you perhaps do it on scraps of paper, or worse than that, it's all in your head. So if you went sick, no one got a clue what was happening. But that's that. So that's pre-spreadsheet. So another thing which I found in my garage is, so what was life like before a laser? So I have Exhibit A here. So this is a Raybone Chesterfield spirit level, which was bought for about £7 from Buck and Ryan in Watford, which I got reimbursed for, and was attached to a piece of skirting rod, sorry, is it architrave probably, or skirting, with drawing off his masking tape. So this piece was about 2.5 metres long, and in time-honoured fashion, you'd have a two-track railway. You'd mark up the dimensions relative to the on the road you weren't taking out. And in the middle of the night, in very poor lighting, you'd be there with this rod, with this thing stuck on it, trying to get the bubble lined up, and then with a 2-metre tape. And so Ian Bailey's in the audience. He was out doing that kind of stuff with me. That's how it was done. And is it any surprise that some of the track relaying we did in those days didn't last very long in terms of the geometry? But shortly after that, in the early 80s, lasers came along, and I guess the rest is a bit of history, but also it's technology developing going forward. Whether we're going to hear about that or not, I don't know. By the way, that's still in use. It's pretty good for levelling up kitchen units and shelving and so on. In terms of the equipment, the first job I went out on was recovering a ladder crossover, a series of crossovers just north of Leicester, and I was very surprised in the autumn of 1979 to see a steam-driven breakdown crane taking the track out. That's the only time I think I saw a steam-driven crane, but given that steam trains had stopped on the national network about 11 years before, that was surprising. And I think probably some of the newer cranes that were introduced in the late 70s, one or two of them may still be in use, heaven help them. And then it comes to wagons, and some of the notes I was reading in here, before you start digging, check how many hoppers you've got, because you've got to have something to fill the hole with. And you can't believe a life in which the the spoil that you took out was in second-hand wagons from the coal industry. The floors of these wagons were wood. So just because you had a rake of 30 wagons didn't mean to say you could put spoil in 30 of them, because it would end up on the track and obviously derail the train when the train moved forward. So we move on. So we've got some really good kit, and certainly in the post-privatisation years, and privatisation, for those who remember, that's 18 years ago, we've got some fabulous fit-for-purpose wagons. Materials handling. We used to have hand-driven side tippers, which were an absolute pain, called mermaid wagons. And I was remembering in here, we're doing formation dig and trying to put sand in the bottom of the dig. There's no big digger to scoop it out. The guys were shoveling it out. And I'm not talking Victorian times or pre-Second World War. I'm talking the 1980s. Certainly, times have moved on. However, enough of my nostalgia. I found it very satisfying. I've come back to track renewals at various stages, either managing it or explaining what's gone wrong, or strategically planning it. And I found it very, very satisfying and quite demanding. And it attracts some real great characters. It takes a few old dogs as well, but it's very, very character building, I think. But the one thing I leave you with is it's relentless. Unlike a project that has a mobilisation phase, peaks of activity and blockades, and then quiet periods. If you get stuck into track relaying, if you have a bad weekend, the next weekend's upon you, and you've got very little time to catch your breath. And so for those of you who are setting out in a career in this direction, you need to pace yourself. There's a sort of a work-life quality balance here. There's a big stress opportunity if you let it get to you. But it's really great fun.